in and find a way to sit that's comfortable and at ease. And let yourself sit and listen, not so much with your intellect or trying to learn something particular, no quiz at the end, but rather more to listen, to sense what resonates as true in your own experience and in your own heart. So that's really what matters. I promised tonight on the website and so forth that in part this evening I would talk about 𝐜𝐨𝐧𝐬, who is a very great meditation master and teacher of mine for a bit, but much more of other colleagues. And I'm curious, so that will be one of the themes tonight. How many of you have sat a 𝐜𝐭 style retreat, just to know? Wonderful. Good. How many have never heard of him? Also good. You will now. That's good. And you know, the talks as tonight are, yes, there's some instruction perhaps in them, but more than that, they are more than anything a reminder and maybe a little bit of a cheering section for your meditation. You know, that there's something that you know that gets supported to value and trust in yourself. So, this man, 𝐜𝐴𝐺𝐬, who just died at age 90, was one of the great mindfulness or Vipassana teachers in the world. The word Vipassana in Pali or Sanskrit means to see clearly. And he developed centers, 180 of them around the world. And when somebody dies, and I've had a couple of people that I've known who died recently, it gives pause, doesn't it? It's as if it opens a window between the worlds, and there's some sense that what seems stable and permanent, that's to say your life, isn't. How many people are, here's another question, how many of you know someone relatively closely, or a friend and family member, who's died relatively recently? Raise your hand. Okay, that's about a third or half. The other half, you don't have to wait that long. You'll be raising your hand also. You will. I mean, that's the game, and it's so mysterious that it seems like we're permanent and life is permanent, and it's not. And when we forget, we can go on automatic pilot. You know what I mean? Just go through our days as if things are going to last forever. And when we remember, there comes a sense of aliveness and care and poignancy and attention, because this is it. Poem from my friend Alison Luderman, who's in Oakland, a wonderful poet. This is from her book, See How We Almost Fly. Called it The Corner Store. And she tells it because wrote it after her mom died. It was a new old Arab man behind the counter. She's living in Oakland. Skinny, brown, and eager. He greeted me like I was his prodigal daughter, as if we both came from the same world, somewhere warmer and more gracious than this foggy city. I was thirsty and alone, sick at heart, grief-soiled, exiled from family through my own faulty temperament, and his face lit up like I was his lost sheep wandering home, coming back to the freezer bins in front of the register, which were still and always filled with the same Star Heart ice cream sandwiches, back to the knobs of beef and packages of hot dogs in the butcher case and the dusty shelves strung with corn chips in immortal Jim Beam. I shuffled to the register and bought my bottled water, and he returned my change beaming like it was a bright new bud on the just bursting open cherry trees, like I was everything precious struggling to grow, and he was blessing me as he handed me the change. Over the dirty counter with its plastic tub of red licorice whips, 5 for a quarter. This old man who didn't speak English beamed out love to me the iron week after my mother's death, so that when I emerged from his store, my whole cockeyed life, wonderful failure, glowed like a sunset after rain. Frustrated city dogs were yelping in their yards, mad with passion behind their chain-link fences, and in the driveway of a peeling paint house, a woman and a girl danced to contagious reggae. Praise Allah, the Buddha, Kuan Yin, Jesus, Mary, and jealous old Jehovah, for eyes and hands of the Blessed One are everywhere. So here we have a great meditation master who died like all of us will. And I remember being with Stephen Levine at retreats that we taught about death and dying, and he'd ask sometimes, so how many of you are going to die? Not all the hands went up. And back in 1970, before some of you were born, 𝐜𝐭 taught his first retreat. He was born a Hindu in what was sort of the greater British India that included Burma and Pakistan and all that as one great British colony. Born in Burma in a very wealthy Indian business family, and went to see his teacher because he had migraines. And the teacher said, that's kind of a trivial reason to come to learn to meditate. I'll teach you, but there's something better than that. And he sat, and not only did he cure his migraines, and there's something in that. There's something about the wounded healer going in and saying, my life doesn't work quite right. Or bringing your wounds to the practices of transformation, and then discovering that you can change your life, that you are not just your wounds, that you're much bigger than that you can heal yourself in some profound way. And so he did. And then he said, I've got to pass this on to other people, and he began to teach in India. In 1970 he went back. And that first retreat that he had, my colleagues Joseph Goldstein and Sharon Salzberg were there, Ram Dass was there, Dan Goleman, the author of Emotional Intelligence, who's coming, Wes Nisker. It was like a who's who of who will be who of Western Dharma and spirituality. And 𝐜𝐭 was the master. And on his retreats, which now are at all these centers around the world, they're silent 10-day meditation retreats. And they're very, very simple retreats. They're run all by volunteers. They work on donation. You come and you sit for a few days doing the practice of being aware of the breath, and then you do this practice that I'll describe of bringing attention into the body of mindfulness. And he spoke about his teachings, as we do here, what are called Dharma teachings. And Dharma is a Sanskrit word with many meanings. It means the truth. It also means the Tao, or the way, the Dharma of things. It also means the teachings. It's a quite universal word. It's the universal truths or teachings behind things. And he taught the Dharma of mindfulness as an invitation for people to experience for yourself, what does it mean to bring attention to this life, rather than to just live out of habit or automatic pilot. As as the most famous instructions from the Buddha begin, my friends, there's a most wonderful way for living beings to realize purification, overcome grief and sorrow, end pain and anxiety, travel the path of wisdom and compassion, and realize liberation. And this is the establishment of mindful awareness. And the reason that it's so wonderful and amazing is because it's an invitation to shift identity from being caught in the stories about he did and she did and who I am and what's called the small sense of self. You may have noticed it goes shopping with you and goes to work with you, lives in your family some. From the small sense of self to step out of that and remember the mystery of life and that you are not just this limited small self idea that you have of yourself, but that you're part of something greater. And you know this, everybody knows it in some way. It's almost as if there's the identity, everyday identity that you have, which it functions fine and you need it. You need to remember your zip code and, your password to get online, right? But you also need to remember your Buddha nature or your true nature or something that's more eternal again. Story from one of my favorite books, Ram Dass's book, How Can I Help? If you don't know it, it's full of beautiful, beautiful stories and the ways that people are serving or trying to help or not. Let me see. I thought that was the right page, but it's not. Let me see if I can find it then. So this is somebody who's writing about listening, paying attention, and who's been trained to do this as a profession. He said there's a guy up on the roof right at the edge with his infant son in his arms, and he's threatening to throw him off and then jump himself. So it's a horrible scene. Homicide, suicide happens a lot with children. He's been having trouble with his wife, mother interfering, they lock him out, he's sleeping in the hallway, and he's gone over the edge. That's where he is, and I'm up there with him. I'm the final guy in the hostage recovery system we set up in New York, which I've been working in for 8 years and heading up now. We haven't lost anybody in all these years. Now, if you're not able to see the big picture, how he's reacting, where and who your backup is, what's on the street, how long it's been going on, your own past experience, the chance that this is a new kind and certainly what's going on inside you from moment to moment. If you can't hold all of that and still be there listening to this guy in a way that he can feel your presence, chances are he's going to go over the edge. Something or someone is going to get killed. We've learned that. And he's in this very intense, complex public situation. Several of us are up there, a net in the street below, a lot going on all around, to say nothing of what's going on in him. The lack of self-esteem and manliness, feeling pushed around by his family, no work. But I can also recognize the overriding love he has for his child, who he's convinced would be better off dead than with those two. Sounds crazy, but it was real for him. So there's a lot for all of us to take in. And so I'm helping him get a sense, a bigger sense, an awareness of everything that's happening, just so he has the picture of it all. I'm opening it up. And the more he does, the more he opens up to me. Turns out what concerns him most is that there be a hearing at family court to work out fair custody. He wants a hearing. But he won't accept a promise from me or a signed note. He tells us we got to get a lawyer and have it on legal paper. So we send out a car and find a local lawyer and get it for him. And when he feels he's got support from the system, he hands us the child. At that point, we have to jump him, because we know that's the critical moment to prevent the suicide. He gets pissed at me because we were talking together like buddies, and now this. And I have to give him the look of, that's how it is, kid. And some part of him knows it too. Some part understands. And so you hear the suffering and the dilemma, And you also hear the intelligence of the person who's tending to him, and somehow his making an ally of the wisdom in that man as well. So at the end it's like, okay, I had to jump you, and you understand that's my job, and it was our job to get the kid back, and it was our job to save your life. And that's how it goes. And so we have this kind of remarkable multiple dimensions of consciousness. In one way, in human incarnation, we have the ordinary things that we do and tend to and care about, and they're important. And in another way, that's not who you are. When you were born, I mean, who were you before you were born? You think that, you know, you just came in and you just that's how it started? You'll see. You'll find out. There's a spirit. I mean, anybody who's had a few kids, you know it's true. When you get one kid, it's like, oh, my kid, right? But when you have 2, 3, 4 of them, they're all different, and they're all weird in different ways, like you are. And then you begin to realize, oh, yeah, we don't just kind of come out all new, tabula rasa, but there's something that comes into this life, in this incarnation. And so all these beautiful teachings that are spreading now, the mindfulness industry that's happening, right? Business is good in the mindfulness industry. MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, the mindfulness movement, mindfulness in all these different ways, they really speak about the possibility for you, for us, to have this dimension of awareness that returns us back to the spirit that we really are, and not just completely identified or lost in the small sense of self, in the small game that we live. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So the invitation from 𝐜𝐭 on retreats, just as we have our 10-day retreats, I'm starting one on Wednesday for 100 people in this beautiful retreat center we have. The invitation from 𝐜𝐭 is to come and experiment, try, what is it like to spend 10 days cultivating and developing this capacity of mindful presence? All these retreats that we have year-round here as well. And what made 𝐜𝐭 unique from early on as a teacher, now it's become more commonplace, is that he spoke about it as a science. He wouldn't teach it as Buddhism or try to make somebody into a Buddhist, spare your friends and family, a new religion. The old ones were hard enough, right? He said instead it is a science, as the Dalai Lama says, it's a science of mind, right? That you take this capacity to pay attention and begin to notice what happens when you feel the breath, the body sensations, the movement of mind, the emotions, not being lost in them, but with this capacity of awareness, or mindfulness, or loving awareness that I talked about. And now, in the last several decades, there's been this explosion of scientific research on neuroplasticity and the capacities for inner change in neuroscience that shows that the trainings of mindful awareness bring inner resiliency in difficulty, ability to face difficult situations better, ability to regulate emotions, capacities to steady attention for students, ways to study better, faster healing, the development or the bolstering of the immune function, the extension of telomerase, which reduces aging process for people. All these cool things that happen, which we kind of knew intuitively, those of us doing it, because we felt better and clearer and freer and so forth. But it's kind of nice to have the science. And 𝐜𝐭 from early on was saying it is a science. And because he taught it in that way, it could extend, as he did, to programs as we've also had in prisons, in businesses, in clinics, in all kinds of other circumstances. Because it wasn't a religion, but rather it was humanity learning to pay attention with mind and heart together. And the new studies show that even not many hours, after 6 or 8 hours of training, there are changes in gene expression. And there's measurable changes in, the nervous system that they can track with an fMRI and things like that. It doesn't take that much. Now you have to keep periodically renewing it. You can't quite rest on your laurels, whatever they are. But if you do, it actually works. Try it. You'll see. So part of 𝐜𝐭's brilliance was to create a very simple form that was non-religious, and that was, he said, this is a science of mind. And also to keep it very simple. To relate it both to the individual and the collective. We can all see, and scientists perhaps more clearly than anyone, that there's no technological solution to our world dilemmas. That climate change, continuing racism, warfare, all the idiocies that we're involved in, that are human-created forms of suffering, where we have starving children here and grain elevators full of food over here, are caused not by the outer circumstances, and no amount of computers and technology and nanotechnology and biotechnology, all that is going to solve it. We have that. That we need a revolution, a science inwardly, that transforms our sense of separation, or our addictions, or our greed, or our fears, because a lot of it's also very primitive, wired in kind of neurological tribal fears, that we learn as human beings to evolve inwardly as we have outwardly. And that's what we're called to do at this time. And 𝐜𝐭 understood this, and he said, well, if you want to do this, if you really want to change the world, you have to change the inner and outer world together. And so the invitation was to sit quietly first and compose yourself, because it's hard to see clearly when it's chaotic in there. Have you noticed? So the first part of his retreats, as we did tonight, was called Anapana, which in Sanskrit or Pali means in and out. It was just feeling life breath and using the awareness of breath to steady and calm the attention. It's not that you become a great breather. It's that you become present to your life. And then after several days of being aware of breath on his 10-day retreats, then he shifts attention to sweep the awareness down, up and down through the body, with the understanding, as the Buddha had, that the body, the foundation of mindfulness of the body, is the place to connect body and mind for wisdom to grow. That line I've used for years from James Joyce, where he wrote, Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body, right? The invitation is actually to wed body and mind together. And as you do, as you slowly move your attention through your body, at first you feel the places that are tight, and tension releases, and pain, and all the things that are held in the body start to release. And as you do it over and over and over again, hour after hour, what happens is that the attention becomes more microscopic, if you will. You can feel more carefully, and then what seemed solid becomes more a field of vibration or sensation, which is what you are. And the sense of being solid, which is a fiction, turns more into the sense of being a river. And that's just a direct experience. The Buddhist teachings say that you are actually 5 rivers. A river of sense experience, always changing, sensations and sounds and sights. A river of feelings, have you noticed, that change moment to moment to moment. A river of perceptions. You think or see or imagine this is, you see, this is called that, this looks like that, that's a person, that's a man, that's a woman, that's a bay tree, or, that's the wall, that's the light. You have your way of organizing things. And moment after moment, there's new perceptions and ideas about them. A river of thoughts. You just sat for half an hour, 35 minutes. You saw that river. I know you did. Right? It carried you away a lot, right? And then a river of consciousness. So as you sit quietly in retreat or in your meditation and become more aware, You realize that you're not a fixed, solid being, but that you're part of the river of life, that who you are is a river. From the poet Hafez, the impermanence of the body, anicca, should give us great clarity, deepening the wonder in our senses and eyes of this mysterious existence we share and are surely just traveling through. If I were in the tavern tonight, Hafez would call for drinks, and the miraculous existence and impermanence of form always makes the illumined ones laugh and sing. You pay attention in the miraculous existence and impermanence, the ever-changing form. You are always changing. You think you know who you are, but that was a moment ago, or a year ago. Or you think you know who someone else is, but they're not that. They are so much more than that. First, they're always changing. You know, it's not the same person you got in that relationship with. You know that's true. Right? And not only are they always changing, but what you see is like the tip of the iceberg of that magnificence of who they are really and of the spirit behind it all. So with the retreat, you start to feel the body and mind as a field of vibration. And this is a direct meditative experience, and sometimes it can get luminous and filled with light. Sometimes it feels atomic, and you get so attentive to it that you move your arm, or you pay attention to some part of your body, and it feels like tiny grains of sand or sparkles of vibration. Or I was reading, modern physics, superstring theory and stuff like that. You actually become a field of vibration. And that's how you experience your body and mind. And you realize, oh, this river thing is actually experienced that way. And as you do, then you begin to relax and realize, oh, instead of holding on, because when you hold on, you know what happens to a river. Okay, it doesn't work. Or if it works a little bit, you get rope burn, basically, because it's changing. You can't hold on to something that's moving. So you relax and you find your ease or joy or peace in the midst of the ever-changing world. You also see how much the mind creates your experience. The Dhammapada's first verse says, all is mind made, or mind is the forerunner. And you think, all right, that's kind of a nice sort of Indian idea, right? I mean, but things are solid. The Transamerica Pyramid and the Golden Gate Bridge and, all the things that we know in this world, they're real, right? So I was at a conference recently in the city, quite a wonderful conference, called Being Human a few weeks ago, which was a combination of visionary neuroscientists, futurists, Dharma people, all looking at the evolution of human consciousness. And a couple of the interesting presentations by David Eagleman and Jeff Thorpe were a bit about the future of the body and the senses. Jeff Thorpe was a data artist. Okay, talk about vibrations and field and so forth. And one of the things he put on the screen from his computer was a real-time image of the 500 major airports in the world on a long line. They have little names, some of them. And the fact that right now, as we're sitting here listening, there are more than 1 million people in the air in airplanes. So get that, okay, right? But this was takeoff and landing, so you'd see there'd be a bright spot for Bombay or for Dubai or New York or Frankfurt or something like that. The bright spots had more planes. And you'd see lines going in, oh, there one landed, line coming out. And it was like looking at this pulsing piece of music of all the planes taking off above and landing in from the bottom. And he was making art out of the 1 million planes that are, or 1 million people that are in planes in the air. And all of a sudden, instead of it feeling like some fixed thing that we're in, you could feel humanity moving and pulsing. So then David 𝐜𝐤 got up, and one of the many things that he talked about was